I'm Tom Mills, and I'm a farmer here in the Peak District. This is our farm, Bubnell Cliff Farm. It's just over 300 acres, just outside of Bakewell. It's part of the Chatsworth estate, and as a family we've farmed here for about 38 years. Historically, when my parents were the tenants here, it used to be a dairy farm, so a relatively sort of standard semi-intensive sort of system. Over the years, as parents sort of got older, I've sort of shown more of an interest in the farming side, and recently taken over the tenancy just 2 years ago. It's still a grass-based farm, but we're now solely beef farming, but now we're very much focused on native breeds. So we've got just over 200 head of English Longhorn cattle, all pedigree cattle, and we farm them on a much more extensive system, and we are very much now focused on sort of farming with nature. Although I'd been involved in the farm for many years, I actually worked away from farming up until that sort of 2 years ago. So although I had my herd of cattle here, I was a civil engineer. So the actual decision to take on the farm was a big decision. So we put a lot of focus on how we'd actually make that work and what we want to do differently. For many years we'd had quite a basic small sort of beef box scheme, and we wanted to grow that as part of the main focus of the business, and pulling all that together with nature-friendly farming and sustainability really seemed to all work together nicely as a sort of package. Because we're a tenanted farm, it was really important that we had the support of our landlords. And actually I think when we put our business case to Chatsworth and we talked around wanting to really enhance some of the environmental aspects of the farm, we managed to align our business case to their wider sort of schemes and plans for the wider estate. But that was a really important factor, you know, and we really couldn't have done it without their support and encouragement to go ahead and make the changes. We've got three distinct sort of areas. So we've got one area of grassland, which has always been more of an intensively farmed sort of system, and that's our main sort of silage ground. And in a way, we've kept that pretty similar because we need a certain amount of silage every year to feed the cattle. But we have looked at ways where we can soften the landscape there and sort of add some biodiversity and habitats. So we planted some hedgerows and infield trees. Then we looked at a large area which is sort of much more rough grazing, and that really lended itself to be the main focus of the environmental aspects of the farm. It's roughly a third of the farm, so it fits nicely with DEFRA's sort of 30% for nature, and we've entered that into a higher tier stewardship scheme for woodland pasture creation, which is a massive shift in the management of that area of land. Traditionally, it used to be quite heavily grazed. We used to have sheep over in the winter, so it was quite heavily grazed in the winter, and then cattle grazing in the summer. And we've really, part of the system, we've basically really stripped back that grazing. We now only have 40 sort of young stock, sort of 18-month-old cattle in the summer, and we've stripped that back even further in the winter. We went into that scheme about 2 years ago, and it's had a quite significant impact already. And then the other third of the farm is our main grazing sort of platform. Over the last 2 years we've adapted that so that we can now do more rotational grazing. So we put water troughs in the fields, and we're in each individual field so we can graze in a much more managed and controlled way. And we've also started to integrate herbal lays within that. So again, that has lots of biodiversity benefits, but it also has lots of benefits for the soil, deep-rooted plants, great resistance for drought, which is something we need to be mindful of. Fundamentally, we needed a sustainable business from an economic point of view. So we needed it to be able to, you know, be profitable, and for us to be able to farm and it not just being a hobby, you know, and it is very much a commercial farm. That all ties in nicely because, you know, actually the environmental schemes that we do, I mean, I'm an environmentalist at heart, so I wanted to do it, and that's the way I want to farm. But actually, from a financial perspective for the farmer, it gives a secured regular income, which you can build the business off. The second part to that is that, again, we wanted to add value to everything that we take off the farm, and the beef box scheme, being able to have a point of difference to that, and to be able to stand behind those credentials of, you know, that animal has been farmed in a way which works alongside nature. It's had a really sort of high standard of welfare. It's been left relatively free to roam in its natural environment and exhibit its natural behaviours to the point where it goes to slaughter. And for us, that's how I want to farm. That's how we want to look after our cattle. But it also really supports the economic side of the business, because it gives us a really strong brand. So some of the benefits we've seen, particularly on this area where we've done the most in terms of the woodland pasture and the area that we've really sort of devoted to nature, and the cattle help with that. The cattle seem remarkably relaxed in this environment. You know, that when you go around and do our stock checks, these are always the group that seem to be most relaxed in their situation. They also seem to do really well on it, actually. So I know there's some scepticism around, the cattle are just there to do the environmental management. Yes, they are there to do that, but they actually seem to be really thriving in it. Part of that's probably the fact that they're native cattle, and this is really, I suppose, their natural environment that they thrive in. But, you know, last year, we didn't use any wormers on them. We did dung samples. There was no need. So like parasitic sort of control seems to be really a lot easier within this sort of system. And I say mainly that whole relaxed sort of nature of them. We've also we do see a lot of interest from sort of social media from our meat sales. So we've collected a lot of interest, and I think a lot of those followers are around enjoy seeing what we're doing from an environmental perspective. So that, from a business point of view, is great. Actually, on the ground, if we think about the grazing area where we've got lots of herbal lays, they seem far more productive than they were with the old traditional lays. When we've had these really dry summers, actually that diverse pasture has really helped. So they were the fields that actually continued to grow when it was really dry, and they were a lifesaver really when we had those sort of droughts. In the area of the woodland pasture, I mean, the difference has really been quite astounding just within a very short period of time, just reducing that grazing. There's so many more sort of birds around. There's obviously clearly lots and lots of sort of mammals around, because we've got lots of sort of buzzards and red kites. We didn't used to see many red kites here at all. You could regularly go out now and you'd see 5 or 6 red kites sort of flying above in a group, and lots of different sort of plant species as well, just from reducing that grazing pressure. So it's become extremely more diverse. We've done bits to try and encourage that and to speed it up. So we've done some tree planting, but really a lot of it is now going to be left and let nature sort of take the lead, I suppose, in it, with some gentle management and sort of focused grazing in certain areas and things like that. So it's clearly having some environmental benefits, and I think they will only improve by more, but it couples with a real business benefit for us. The regular grant income is really helpful, and I say it's stable, which is most important for farmers in this day and age, particularly with the reduction of single farm payment. So actually this goes a part way to giving that sort of regular income that comes in through the grant schemes. So it all seems to work really well together.
I'm Rebecca Newman. I'm the Farming and Protected Landscapes Manager for the Peak District National Park Authority. We were asked initially just for a fairly simple inquiry into the Farming and Protected Landscape scheme, and that grew really into looking at the whole farm system and how the National Park's knowledge could sort of partner with what Tom was doing here and make it all that bigger and better. So we could help in terms of what wildlife habitats there were here, what opportunities there were within national schemes, and then what the opportunities were within Farming and Protected Landscapes to sort of supplement what could happen and be supported by those national schemes. Farmers are good at farming. The National Park has got a suite of farm advisors who know about regulation, who know about national agri-environment schemes, who know about the wildlife and cultural heritage of the National Park. And together with the farmer, we can bring all of that together to hopefully create a package that works for farming and works for the environment and works for the National Park. National agri-environment schemes and the National Park Authority aren't something to be feared by the farming community. There is benefits to them in working together with other organisations. Nature can work hand in hand with commercial farming. Farming and Protected Landscapes has 4 themes, which are climate, nature, people and place. And essentially they marry really well with the National Park objectives. So if we're delivering for Farming and Protected Landscapes in a farming context, we're delivering for the National Park Management Plan. As well as the management plan, we now have a burgeoning nature recovery plan, which again is looking at opportunities across the National Park for not just looking after nature, but for enhancing nature. And so what's happening here, is looking at across the whole farm. So it's looking at it in the area that's dedicated for nature, but also at the more intensive parts of the farm, and looking at how we can link and enhance habitats and make the most as well of the cultural heritage aspects of the holding. At a bigger scale as well, DEFRA has this ambition for 30% of the land managed for nature. And here we've managed to do 30%, I would say, plus managed for nature. And increasingly at the National Park, we're looking at how we define what a nature-friendly farm is. And there are several different ways of doing them, but one that we're really working on is 30% of the farm where nature is the focus.
If there was, other farmers that were perhaps looking at some of the environmental schemes or looking to make changes, I suppose my advice would be to get advice and don't be sort of put off and scared by sort of taking advice from others. You've got to try and match the system to your farm. And there's lots of different ways to farm, there's lots of different ideas, and there's lots of different information out there, but not all of those different systems and different schemes will work for your particular farm. So I think that's the biggest thing I took away from what we did, is that we really said, well, that bit of the farm is really good for this, that bit of the farm is really productive, so that needs to stay productive, we need to produce food, and that's what we need, and this bit of farm can be X, Y and Z. So I think that's one of the biggest things I took from it all, was that matching the right management with the right aspects of your farm.
And that, I think, is where the benefit is. It's about bringing everybody's different ideas and knowledges and expertise together, and that makes what the farmer wants to do often a better thing for the farm as well as for the environment. And I think that's what is clear here at Bubnell Cliff Farm.